My name is Olivia Miller, and at 28 years old, I finally learned what it means to stand up for yourself, even when the people you need to stand up to are your own parents. I spent my whole life watching my parents bend over backward for my brother Ethan while I struggled alone. They mortgaged our family home for his failed businesses, ignored my achievements, and then had the audacity to try and control my wedding day. But what happened next changed everything, and now they're the ones living with the embarrassment. If you're watching this video right now, drop a comment letting me know where you're from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever had to create boundaries with family members who took you for granted. Trust me, this story might just give you the courage you need. Growing up in Oakwood Heights, a middle-class suburb just outside of Chicago, I had what most would consider a normal childhood on the surface. Our house was a modest, two-story colonial with a big backyard where neighborhood kids would gather to play kickball in the summers. Dad worked as an insurance adjuster, and Mom taught third grade at the local elementary school. But beneath that ordinary exterior, there was a dynamic that shaped my entire life. The first time I noticed something was different was on my 7th birthday. I had been begging for a specialized art set that cost $50. My parents said it was too expensive, but promised a small party with cake instead. Just 2 weeks later, Ethan, who was 10 at the time, mentioned wanting to try hockey. Within days, my parents spent $400 on brand new equipment without hesitation. I remember sitting at the top of the stairs that night, listening to my mom tell my dad how they'd need to tighten the budget that month. But she said Ethan had so much potential and they needed to nurture it. As we grew older, the pattern became more obvious. When Ethan joined the baseball team, my parents never missed a game. They would rearrange their work schedules, cancel plans, and drive hours for tournaments. Meanwhile, when I won the regional science fair in 8th grade, neither of them attended the ceremony. Mom had to grade papers, and Dad was at Ethan's baseball practice. I received a quick congratulations when I got home, before the conversation immediately shifted to Ethan's upcoming game. My grandmother, Rose, was the only one who saw me. On weekends, when I'd stay at her small apartment in the city, she would look through my sketchbooks filled with building designs and tell me, "Olivia, one day you will build something magnificent, and the whole world will see what I see in you." Those weekends with Grandma Rose became my sanctuary, the one place where my achievements were celebrated rather than overlooked. By the time I entered high school, I had developed a sense of self-reliance that most teenagers lack. While other kids my age were asking their parents for help with homework or advice on social situations, I had learned to solve my problems on my own. I threw myself into academics and art, staying late after school to use the computers in the library, since we only had one at home, which Ethan usually monopolized for gaming. Ethan continued to grow more entitled with each passing year. When he got a C in algebra, my parents hired a private tutor. When I struggled with chemistry, my mom suggested I just try harder. When Ethan wanted a car for his 16th birthday, my parents bought him a used Ford, even though it strained their finances. When my 16th birthday came around, I received a card with $20 inside, and a reminder that I should be saving for college. My best friend Chloe was the first person outside the family to notice the disparity. After spending a weekend at our house during sophomore year, she pulled me aside and asked, "Does it bother you that your parents treat Ethan so differently?" Until that moment, I had never voiced my feelings about it to anyone except my grandmother. Having someone else validate what I was experiencing made it both more real and more painful. I'll never forget the night of my high school graduation. I had been named valedictorian, maintaining a perfect 4.0 GPA while working weekends at the local bookstore. As I stood at the podium delivering my speech, I scanned the audience for my parents. They were there, but my mother was helping Ethan fix his tie, and my father was checking his phone. Neither of them actually watching as I spoke about perseverance and following your dreams. That same night, I overheard my father telling a family friend how Ethan had been accepted to Northwestern University with a partial athletic scholarship and how proud they were. My acceptance to Cornell with a partial academic scholarship had warranted only a brief mention when the letter arrived. My grandmother had been the one to take me out to celebrate. She even framed my acceptance letter, which now hangs in her apartment rather than our family home. I remember lying in bed that night, staring at the ceiling of my childhood bedroom, surrounded by trophies and certificates that meant nothing to the people who should have cared the most. It was then that I made a promise to myself. I would build a life where I was valued, even if it meant creating that life entirely on my own. As graduation summer passed, my parents threw themselves into preparing for Ethan to leave for college. A new laptop, dorm supplies, clothes, shopping trips. Meanwhile, I picked up extra shifts at the bookstore, saving every penny and researching student loans. When Chloe asked if I was excited about Cornell, I remember telling her, I'm excited to finally be somewhere where the only person determining my worth will be me. My college years at Cornell were defined by constant hustle and exhaustion. While most of my peers were enjoying the full college experience, I was juggling 3 part-time jobs alongside a full course load in architecture. I worked at the campus coffee shop in the mornings, the library in the afternoons, and did remote data entry work on weekends. Every hour not spent in class or working was dedicated to my studio projects. The contrast between Ethan's college experience and mine couldn't have been more stark. My parents had contributed $80,000 toward his education at Northwestern, covering what his partial scholarship didn't. For me, they offered a one-time gift of $1,000 my freshman year, saying that since I had chosen such an expensive school, I'd need to figure out the rest myself. When winter break came that first year, I stayed in my dorm room rather than going home. I couldn't afford the plane ticket, and the thought of watching my parents fawn over Ethan, who would undoubtedly be treated like a returning hero, was too much to bear. I told them I had a job opportunity I couldn't pass up. In reality, I spent Christmas alone, eating ramen noodles and working ahead on next semester's projects. By junior year, I had settled into a routine of constant work and study. That spring, I took an elective course in sustainable design that changed everything. Not just because of the subject matter, which I fell in love with, but because that's where I met Liam. He sat next to me on the first day, and we were paired for a semester-long project. From our very first conversation, something felt different with him. He listened when I spoke, really listened, in a way I had never experienced from anyone except my grandmother. Liam came from a warm, supportive family. That was everything mine wasn't. The first time he invited me to dinner at his parents' apartment in the city, I felt almost uncomfortable with how interested they were in my studies and my goals. His mother, Karen, asked detailed questions about my design projects. His father, David, wanted to know about my interest in sustainable architecture. They engaged with me as a person of value, something I had craved my entire life. That same semester, I entered a prestigious design competition and won first place. The department chair personally congratulated me, and my work was featured in an architecture journal. I called my parents to share the news, only to have my mother cut the conversation short because they were headed to watch Ethan play in an intramural game. When I hung up the phone, Liam found me crying in the studio. It was the first time I had ever let anyone see how deeply my parents' indifference affected me. "They'll never see me," I told him that night, "no matter what I achieve." "Then they're missing out on knowing an incredible person," he replied, wiping away my tears. "And that's their loss, not yours." Shortly after, we learned that Ethan had dropped out of Northwestern, after my parents had spent $80,000 on his education. Rather than expressing disappointment, my parents immediately supported his decision. He had a brilliant business idea for a sports training app, and they were helping him get started. Meanwhile, I was eating one meal a day to save money for textbooks. I graduated from Cornell with honors in architecture. My grandmother, Liam, and his parents attended the ceremony, cheering loudly when my name was called. My parents arrived late, missed my walk across the stage, and left early, because Ethan had a meeting with a potential investor. The contrast between the genuine pride on Liam's parents' faces and the distracted obligation on my own parents' faces cemented something I had known for years, but had been afraid to fully accept. I had to stop looking for validation from people who would never give it. Through a connection from one of my professors, I secured a position at Hartman & Associates, a prestigious architecture firm in Chicago specializing in sustainable design. It wasn't the highest-paying offer I received, but it was the one that aligned best with my passion. When I told my parents about the job, my father's first question was whether I'd be making enough money to pay off my student loans. There was no congratulations, no pride, just practical concerns about finances. The irony that they had never once asked Ethan about his ability to repay them for his education was not lost on me. As I prepared to move back to Chicago and start my career, news came that Ethan's app had failed to gain traction, and the business had folded after 6 months. My parents immediately stepped in to bail him out, paying off the credit card debt he had accumulated and allowing him to move back into his old bedroom. When I expressed concern about their finances, my mother dismissed me, saying, "We have always taken care of our children when they needed it." The fact that they had never taken care of me when I needed it hung in the air, unacknowledged. Over the next 5 years, I poured everything into my career. I was the first to arrive at the office and the last to leave. I volunteered for challenging projects, working weekends and holidays to prove myself. My dedication paid off as I moved up from junior architect to project lead, then to associate architect, earning the respect of colleagues twice my age. Despite my professional success, I struggled with imposter syndrome. Years of being overlooked by my parents had left me with a persistent inner voice, questioning whether I truly deserved my achievements. In moments of professional triumph, I would find myself waiting for someone to realize I was a fraud, to see what my parents had always seen, someone less worthy than my brother. Liam remained my rock throughout these years. After graduation, he had taken a position with an engineering firm, also in Chicago, and our relationship deepened. He understood my drive, my insecurities, and most importantly, he never once compared me to anyone else or found me lacking. With him, I was enough, exactly as I was. Meanwhile, Ethan launched his second business venture, a chain of specialized sports training centers. My parents, undeterred by his first failure, invested heavily in this new project. During one of our rare family dinners, My father proudly announced that they had helped Ethan secure a business loan by co-signing with their personal assets. I cautiously asked about the business plan and market research, only to be shut down by my mother. "Not everyone needs to overthink things like you do, Olivia," she said. "Sometimes you just need to take a leap of faith." That leap of faith lasted 14 months before the business collapsed under poor management and insufficient market demand. This time, my parents were on the hook for the outstanding loans. Rather than acknowledging the financial disaster, they doubled down. During a tense Sunday lunch, my father announced they had mortgaged their house, the home I had grown up in, to fund Ethan's third business idea, a sports nutrition supplement line. "You did what?" I asked, unable to hide my shock. "We believe in your brother," my mother replied defensively. "This idea is going to be huge." I tried to offer help, suggesting they consult with a financial advisor before taking such a drastic step. "I know some people through work who could review the business plan," I offered. My father laughed dismissively. "Just because you design fancy buildings doesn't mean you understand business, Olivia." "Ethan has done his research this time." "Has he, though?" I pushed back. "Because the last two ventures failed within 18 months. What makes this one different?" "That's enough," my mother snapped. "Just because you chose a safe career path doesn't give you the right to criticize your brother for being an entrepreneur. Not everyone wants to work for someone else their whole life." I left that lunch feeling a familiar combination of hurt and frustration. On the drive home, Liam listened patiently as I vented my concerns. "They're going to lose their house," I said, "and they don't even see it coming." 2 weeks later, I received a major promotion at work, becoming the youngest senior architect in the firm's history. That same week, Liam proposed during a weekend trip to Lake Michigan. He had planned a beautiful picnic on the beach, getting down on one knee as the sun set over the water. It was perfect, intimate, and completely us. When I called my parents to share both pieces of news, their response was predictably lukewarm. "That's nice, dear," my mother said about the promotion. Regarding the engagement, she asked practical questions about the ring and whether we had set a date. But there was none of the excitement I had hoped for, even for this milestone. In stark contrast, when Ethan brought his new girlfriend, Sophia, to a family dinner the following month, my parents were effusive. They asked her detailed questions about her life and career, showing more interest in her during one dinner than they had shown in Liam over 3 years. When Ethan mentioned he and Sophia were thinking about moving in together after dating for 4 months, my mother squealed with delight, immediately offering to help them find an apartment. Later that night, Liam found me crying in our bedroom. "I don't understand," I sobbed. "I've done everything right. I worked my way through college. I built a successful career. I found someone who loves me, and none of it matters to them." Ethan drops out of college, fails at 2 businesses, risks their retirement, and they still act like he hung the moon. It was a painful realization that no achievement of mine would ever be enough to earn the approval I had spent my life seeking. With Liam's encouragement, I began seeing a therapist to process my family trauma and prepare for our marriage without the weight of these unresolved feelings. Liam and I decided on a year-long engagement, setting our wedding date for the following June. We chose a beautiful botanical garden venue in Chicago, a place that combined my love of architecture with natural elements. As 2 working professionals with good salaries and no debt, We were fortunate to be able to plan and pay for the entire wedding ourselves. Initially, my mother showed little interest in the wedding planning. When I invited her to come dress shopping, she had a scheduling conflict with one of Ethan's product launch meetings. When I asked for her input on invitations, she responded with a cursory, "Whatever you like is fine, dear." I had expected this detachment and had made peace with planning most of the wedding with Liam's mother, Karen, who was thrilled to be involved. Everything changed about 4 months before the wedding. Suddenly, my mother began calling daily with opinions about details she had previously shown no interest in. She criticized our choice of venue, saying it was too unconventional, and suggested we switch to her friend's country club instead. Despite the fact that we had already paid a non-refundable deposit. "The garden is nice, Olivia, but it's not very traditional," she said during one particularly frustrating call. "And what if it rains? Have you thought about that? The country club has a beautiful indoor space." "Yes, Mom, we have a rain contingency plan," I explained for the third time. "The garden has a glass conservatory that's absolutely stunning. We've already worked everything out with the coordinator." Next came the complaints about my dress, which she hadn't bothered to see until I showed her photos after purchasing it. "It's so simple," she said with disappointment. "I always pictured you in something more elaborate, with a long train and lots of beading." "This is the dress I love," I replied firmly. "It suits me and the venue perfectly." The strange part was that her sudden interest coincided with concerning news about Ethan's business. The supplement line was struggling to get distribution deals, and initial sales were far below projections. During a brief visit to their house to drop off save-the-date cards, I noticed past-due bills on the counter and overheard my father on the phone with their bank discussing loan payments. As the wedding date approached, my parents' attempts to control the event intensified. My mother sent me a list of 20 additional guests she wanted to invite, most of whom were business associates of my father's that I had never met. When I gently explained that we had already finalized our guest list and budget, she became indignant. "These are important connections for your father," she insisted, "and they could be potential investors for Ethan's business. It would be selfish not to include them." "This is our wedding, Mom," I reminded her, "not a networking event for Ethan." The tension came to a head 6 weeks before the wedding, when my mother showed up unannounced at our apartment with a completely different set of floral arrangements than what we had selected. "I took the liberty of changing the order," she announced proudly. "The florist is a friend of mine, and she agreed these arrangements would be much more appropriate. The ones you chose were so plain." I stared at the photos she presented. Elaborate centerpieces with red roses and gold accents that clashed completely with our natural organic green and white palette. "Mom, we can't use these," I said as calmly as possible. "They don't match anything else in the wedding. We've already paid for the original arrangements." "Well, I've already paid for these," she countered. "And frankly, Olivia, you should be grateful. Your father and I are under tremendous financial strain right now, with helping Ethan through this rough patch. The least you could do is appreciate it when we try to contribute." That was when I lost my composure. "Contribute? You haven't contributed anything except criticism and complications. You ignored this wedding until you suddenly decided to take it over. Where was this involvement when I was calling you for months asking for your input?" "Don't be dramatic," my mother said dismissively. "I'm just trying to help make your wedding day special." "By making it completely different from what Liam and I want?" I retorted. "This is our day. not yours. The argument escalated until my father called, demanding to speak with me. "Your mother is in tears," he said accusingly. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you treat us?" "If you continue being this stubborn, we might not even attend the wedding." I was stunned into silence. The irony of his statement, "everything we've done for you," ringing in my ears. After composing myself, I responded, "Dad, I love you both, but this is my wedding. If you can't respect our choices, then maybe it would be better if you didn't attend." The phone call ended with my father hanging up on me. What followed was 2 weeks of strained silence, broken only by passive-aggressive texts from my mother about how family should come first, and how disappointed she was in my attitude. During this time, Liam's parents were incredible, stepping in to help with final arrangements and providing emotional support. His mother, Karen, held me while I cried after particularly difficult exchanges with my family. "You deserve better than this," she whispered. "And you are allowed to set boundaries, even with your parents." The temporary estrangement was painful but clarifying. For the first time, I was standing firm in my decisions, refusing to be diminished or controlled. Liam stood by me completely, never once suggesting I compromise to keep the peace. "This is our day," he reminded me, "and you've spent your entire life compromising for them." Not this time. Just 1 month before the wedding, my parents reached out, asking to meet for coffee. Hoping for reconciliation, I agreed. What I didn't expect was the bombshell they dropped within minutes of sitting down. "We're in serious financial trouble," my father announced without preamble. "Ethan's business it hasn't worked out as planned. We're at risk of losing the house." I felt a complex mix of emotions: vindication that my concerns had been valid, alongside genuine worry for my parents. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully. "What happened?" "The market just wasn't ready for his product," my mother explained defensively. "These things happen in business. The point is, we're going to need to make some changes, and we were hoping you would understand." What followed was a stunning request. They wanted me to downsize my wedding and use the money we would save to help them with their mortgage payments. They had already lost $50,000 on Ethan's failed business and were 3 months behind on their home loan. "We wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate," my father added, "but family helps family in times of need." I sat there, coffee growing cold, trying to process the audacity of their request. "Let me get this straight," I finally said. "You mortgaged your house for Ethan's business without consulting a financial advisor, despite my warnings. Now that it has failed, as I predicted, you want me to sacrifice the wedding Liam and I have saved for, planned for over a year, and are paying for entirely ourselves to bail you out." "There's no need to be cruel about it," my mother sniffed. "Ethan took a risk that didn't pan out. It happens to many entrepreneurs." "This is his 3rd failed business," I pointed out. "And each time you've sacrificed your financial security to prop him up. I offered to help review his business plan. I offered to connect you with financial advisors. You dismissed me every time." "So, you're saying no?" my father asked incredulously. "I'm saying no," I confirmed. "Liam and I are not changing our wedding plans. We have contracts signed, deposits paid, and guests coming from across the country. I'm happy to help you find financial counseling resources, but I will not cancel or downsize our wedding." My parents left shortly after, both visibly angry. That evening, I began receiving texts from extended family members asking why I was being so selfish and abandoning my parents in their time of need. It became clear that my parents had shared a very one-sided version of events with the family. To make matters worse, I discovered through my cousin Mia that my mother was planning to wear a cream-colored dress to the wedding, despite knowing that it was inappropriate to wear anything resembling white to someone else's wedding. When I called to discuss it, she became defensive. "It's not white, it's cream," she insisted. "And it's the only formal dress I have that fits me right now. Unless you expect me to spend money on a new dress when we're about to lose our house." The emotional manipulation was blatant, but I held firm. "Please find something else to wear, Mom. Any color other than white or cream would be fine." 2 weeks before the wedding, my parents showed up unannounced at our final venue meeting. The garden coordinator had just finished confirming our ceremony layout when my mother interrupted. "Actually, we were thinking the ceremony would work better on the east lawn rather than the rose garden," she announced, as if she had been part of the planning all along. "And we'll need to add a table at the front for some special family friends." The coordinator looked at me in confusion. I took a deep breath before responding. "Mom, Dad, we didn't invite you to this meeting. The plans are finalized. There will be no changes." "We are still your parents," my father said sternly. "You do not speak to us that way." What followed was a tense confrontation in front of our very uncomfortable venue coordinator. It ended with my parents storming out, my father calling me an ungrateful daughter as they left. I broke down in tears as soon as they were gone, the weight of years of emotional neglect crashing down at once. That evening, Liam found me crying in our bedroom, wondering if we should just elope and avoid the drama entirely. He sat beside me, taking my hands in his. "This is exactly why we need to have this wedding exactly as we planned it," he said firmly. "Your entire life, they have made you feel small and unimportant. This day is about celebrating us and our love, surrounded by people who genuinely support us. We are not letting them take that away." Later that week, Ethan showed up at our apartment unannounced. He looked tired and stressed, with none of the usual bravado he typically displayed. "Did Mom and Dad send you to talk to me?" I guessed as I reluctantly let him in. "They don't know I'm here," he replied, surprising me. "Look, Olivia, things are bad at home. Really bad. Dad is talking about bankruptcy, and Mom cries all the time." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said sincerely. "But I'm not canceling my wedding to bail them out, Ethan. That's not a reasonable expectation." He ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "Why do you always have to be so difficult? Throughout our entire lives, you've been the problem child, always wanting things your way, never considering the family." His words stunned me into momentary silence before anger took over. "Are you serious right now? I'm the problem child? I worked my way through college while they paid for yours. I built my career from nothing while they funded business after business for you. I have never asked them for anything, Ethan. Not a single thing." "That's not true," he argued. "You were always competing for attention, always trying to show me up with your grades and awards." "I was trying to be seen," I exploded. "Just once. I wanted them to be as proud of me as they always were of you. Do you have any idea what it feels like to achieve something significant and have the people who should care the most barely acknowledge it? To watch them move mountains for your brother while you struggle alone? Ethan looked genuinely confused. They gave you everything I had. No, Ethan. They gave me nothing, and you still had everything. That's the difference. And now that their blind support of you has finally caught up with them financially, they expect me to sacrifice too. I won't do it. Not this time. He left shortly after our first honest conversation in years, leaving us both shaken. As the door closed behind him, I felt a strange sense of relief. Finally, I had said the things I had been holding inside for decades. Whether he understood or not was beyond my control, but I had spoken my truth. My wedding day dawned clear and beautiful, the June sunshine filtering through the trees of the botanical garden exactly as I had envisioned. I spent the morning getting ready with my bridesmaids, including my best friend Chloe and Liam's sister Ava, in a sunlit room overlooking the gardens. Despite the tension of the preceding weeks, I felt surprisingly calm. "Are you nervous about seeing your parents?" Chloe asked, as she helped me into my dress, a sleek, modern gown with subtle architectural details that perfectly reflected my aesthetic. "I'm prepared for whatever happens," I replied honestly. "Today is about Liam and me, not about family drama." Karen, my soon-to-be mother-in-law, came in to see me before the ceremony. She took my hands in hers and looked at me with tears in her eyes. "You look absolutely beautiful," she said. "I want you to know how proud we are to have you joining our family." Her sincere words brought tears to my eyes. This was what parental love was supposed to feel like, unconditional and supportive. I hugged her tightly, grateful beyond words for her presence in my life. My parents arrived 20 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to begin, cutting it so close that I had begun to wonder if they would come at all. My mother had complied with my request not to wear cream, but had chosen a remarkably formal gown that seemed designed to draw attention. My father looked uncomfortable in his suit, his expression tense. Our greeting was awkward. My mother offered a stiff hug while my father barely made eye contact. "The garden looks nice," my mother admitted reluctantly, though I still think the country club would have been more practical. I chose not to engage with the criticism. "Thank you both for coming," I said simply. "The ceremony will be starting soon." As I turned to leave, my mother grabbed my arm. "I noticed the seating chart has us in the 3rd row," she said accusingly. "Family should be in the front row. The front row is for people who have supported us throughout our relationship," I explained calmly. "Liam's parents are there, along with my grandmother and my mentor from the firm." "We're your parents," my father interjected angrily. "Yes, you are, and you're seated in the 3rd row," I replied firmly, before walking away to take my position for the ceremony. Despite the tense start, the ceremony itself was perfect. Walking down the aisle toward Liam, seeing his face light up as he watched me approach, I felt a profound sense of rightness. This man had seen me at my most vulnerable and loved me unconditionally. As we exchanged our vows beneath the garden's ancient oak tree, surrounded by blooming flowers and dappled sunlight, nothing else mattered. The reception began beautifully in the glass conservatory, transformed with twinkling lights and the simple, elegant green and white decor we had chosen. Liam and I shared our first dance to the song that had been playing the night he proposed. And for a few magical moments, everything felt perfect. Then came the speeches. Liam's father gave a heartfelt welcome, sharing stories of how happy Liam had been since meeting me, and how delighted their family was to gain a daughter. My grandmother spoke next, her voice wavering with emotion as she told guests how proud she was of the woman I had become. When my father took the microphone, I felt Liam's hand tighten around mine. My father cleared his throat awkwardly, looking around the room. "When Olivia was born," he began, "her mother and I had such hopes for her. She was always independent, sometimes too independent for her own good." I felt my body tense at the backhanded compliment. "While she hasn't always made the choices we would have wished," he continued, "she has managed to do well for herself, and Liam seems like a fine young man." The faint praise hung in the air, creating a palpable discomfort among the guests. But what came next shocked everyone. "Now, on a more serious note," my father said, his voice dropping conspiratorially, "our family is going through a difficult time financially. My son Ethan, Olivia's brother, took a brave entrepreneurial risk that unfortunately didn't succeed. As a result, my wife and I are in danger of losing our home." Audible gasps came from several guests. Liam's parents exchanged alarmed glances. "If anyone here is in a position to help out a family in need," my father continued shamelessly, "we would be most grateful for any assistance during this challenging time." The room fell completely silent. I sat frozen in my seat, unable to believe what was happening. My father was using my wedding reception to solicit money from our guests. It was beyond inappropriate, beyond embarrassing. It was the final betrayal. In that moment of shocked silence, something shifted inside me. The lifetime of seeking approval, of accepting less than I deserved, of making myself small to avoid rocking the boat, all of it crystallized into perfect clarity. Without thinking, I stood up and walked toward my father, holding out my hand for the microphone. After a moment of hesitation, he handed it over. "Thank you, Dad, for those unexpected remarks," I began, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "I think this is a good opportunity to share some context with our friends and family who might be confused by what they just heard." I took a deep breath, looking around at the faces of our guests. For as long as I can remember, there has been a pattern in my family. My brother Ethan has received unwavering support, financially and emotionally, while I was expected to make my own way. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college while my parents paid for my brother's education. I built my career without assistance, while they funded one failed business venture after another for him. I could see my mother shifting uncomfortably in her seat, my father's face reddening with anger or embarrassment, or perhaps both. When Liam and I announced our engagement, my parents showed minimal interest until just before the wedding, when they suddenly tried to take control of every detail. Then, a month ago, they asked us to cancel our wedding and give them the money instead, to help pay for the house they mortgaged to fund my brother's 3rd failed business. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ethan, seated at a table near the back, stood up as if to leave, then sat back down, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. "I'm not sharing this to humiliate my family," I continued, my voice softening. "I'm sharing it because today marks the end of a lifetime of seeking validation from people who have shown me repeatedly that they cannot give it. Today, I am choosing to surround myself with love and support, to build a new family with my husband, and to finally, fully believe that I am enough, exactly as I am." I turned to look directly at my parents. Mom, Dad, I love you. I always will, but I will no longer diminish myself to earn your approval. I hope someday we can build a healthier relationship, but that starts with honesty and respect, which is why I couldn't let Dad's speech go unanswered. Turning back to our guests, I raised my glass. To all of you who have truly supported us, who have celebrated our successes and comforted us in our struggles, thank you for being here today. Your presence means everything. I handed the microphone to Liam, who had joined me at the front of the room. He took it, squeezing my hand in solidarity. What my wife said, he added simply, earning a gentle laugh from the crowd that broke some of the tension. Now, let's get back to celebrating. DJ, music please. As the music resumed and guests made their way to the dance floor, I watched my parents quietly exit the reception, followed shortly after by Ethan. Their departure should have felt painful, but instead, I felt lighter than I had in years, as if I had finally put down a burden I had been carrying my entire life. Liam's mother found me moments later, wrapping me in a tight hug. "I have never been prouder of anyone," she whispered. "That took incredible courage." For the remainder of the reception, I was surrounded by genuine love and support. Friends and family members approached me throughout the evening to express their admiration for my honesty and strength. Many shared their own stories of family struggles, creating connections I had never expected. As Liam and I danced under the stars in the garden later that night, he pulled me close. "You were magnificent today," he said softly. "How do you feel?" "Free," I replied honestly, "for the first time in my life. Completely free." The days following our wedding were surprisingly peaceful. Liam and I departed for our honeymoon in Greece, spending 2 blissful weeks exploring ancient ruins and crystal-clear beaches, completely disconnected from the family drama back home. It was exactly what we needed, a buffer of time and distance to process everything that had happened, and begin our marriage in a positive space. Upon our return to Chicago, I had several voicemails from extended family members, most expressing support after witnessing the wedding reception confrontation. My cousin Mia called to tell me that my parents had become something of a pariah in their social circle after their behavior at the wedding. Apparently, several guests had overheard my father approaching others for money, even after his speech was cut short, causing tremendous embarrassment. "People are talking," Mia said. "Not just about what happened at the wedding, but about how they've treated you over the years. I think a lot of people had noticed but never said anything. Now it's all out in the open." While I took no pleasure in my parents' social discomfort, there was a certain poetic justice to the situation. For once, they were experiencing the embarrassment they had so often caused me. In the weeks that followed, I focused on building my new life with Liam. We settled into a routine in our apartment, discussing future plans and enjoying the simple pleasure of being together without wedding stress hanging over us. I threw myself back into work, taking on an exciting new project designing a sustainable community center that aligned perfectly with my professional passions. A month after the wedding, I received a text message from Ethan asking if we could meet for coffee. Curious but cautious, I agreed. When I arrived at the cafe, I barely recognized my brother. Gone was the cocky confidence that had always defined him. He looked tired, humbled, and several years older than his actual age. "Thank you for meeting me," he began awkwardly. I've been doing a lot of thinking since your wedding. That makes two of us, I replied neutrally. I want to apologize, he said, the words clearly difficult for him. Not just for the wedding, but for everything. I never saw it before, how differently they treated us. It was so normal to me that I never questioned it. His admission stunned me into silence. Of all the outcomes I had imagined from the wedding confrontation, Ethan's awareness had not been one of them. After your speech, he continued, I started remembering things. How they came to all my games but missed your academic competitions. How they paid for my college but not yours. How they funded my businesses but celebrated none of your achievements. I didn't see it, because it benefited me not to see it. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, still wary of his motives. Because I'm trying to be better, he said simply. I moved out of their house last week. Got a regular job at a sporting goods store. Nothing glamorous, but it's honest work. I'm not taking another dime from them. We talked for over 2 hours that day, having the first real conversation of our adult lives. Ethan shared that our parents had indeed lost their house, moving into a small apartment and facing the financial consequences of their choices. They were angry and bitter, blaming everyone but themselves for their situation. They're still furious about your wedding speech, he admitted. But honestly, Olivia, you said what needed to be said. It's uncomfortable, but it's the truth. Our relationship was far from healed, but that conversation marked the beginning of something new between us. A tentative mutual respect that held potential for growth. 2 months later, I received a stiff, formal email from my mother. She and my father wanted to meet to discuss recent events. After consulting with my therapist, I agreed to meet them at a neutral location, a restaurant halfway between our homes. Liam offered to come with me, but I decided this was something I needed to do alone. My parents looked older when I saw them, the stress of their financial situation etched on their faces. My father barely made eye contact as I sat down across from them. We wanted to clear the air, my mother began, her voice tight. What you did at your wedding was very hurtful to us. I spoke the truth, I replied calmly. After a lifetime of being overlooked and undervalued, I finally stood up for myself. You humiliated us in front of everyone we know, my father countered. Our friends, our family, all of them looking at us like we're monsters. I'm sorry you feel humiliated, I said sincerely. But I am not sorry for what I said. Every word was true, and I would say it again. What followed was a tense but surprisingly productive conversation. For the first time, I didn't back down or accept their version of events. When my mother claimed they had always supported me, I calmly listed specific instances when they had not. When my father suggested I was exaggerating the differences in how they treated Ethan and me, I provided concrete examples that he couldn't refute. They didn't apologize that day, or acknowledge the pain they had caused. But something shifted nonetheless. By refusing to accept their revisionist history, by standing firm in my truth without anger or accusation, I changed the dynamic between us. I was no longer the overlooked daughter seeking validation, but a strong, confident woman who knew her worth. As we were preparing to leave, my mother asked hesitantly if they would be allowed to visit our home sometime. It was a small gesture, but significant coming from her. I'd like that, I replied. But there will need to be boundaries. I will not tolerate being diminished or dismissed anymore. My father nodded stiffly, and for the first time that day, he looked directly at me. "You've changed," he observed. "I have," I agreed. "I finally became the person I was always meant to be, even without your support." Over the following months, we began the slow, difficult process of rebuilding our relationship on new terms. I suggested family therapy, and to my surprise, my parents agreed to attend one session, though my father declared it a waste of time and money. After the first meeting, however, my mother continued to go with me occasionally, making small but meaningful efforts to understand my perspective. As the 1-year anniversary of our wedding approached, Liam and I received unexpected news. We were expecting a baby. The pregnancy brought a whirlwind of emotions, joy and excitement mixed with apprehension. I worried about what kind of parent I would be, given the models I had grown up with. "I'm terrified of making the same mistakes they made," I confessed to Liam one night. "Of making our child feel unseen or unvalued." "That will never happen," he assured me, his hand resting protectively over my still flat stomach. "You know exactly how that feels, which means you know exactly what not to do. Plus, I'll be right here with you, making sure we both get it right." When we shared the news with Liam's parents, they were ecstatic, immediately offering support and expressing their joy at becoming grandparents. Telling my own parents was more complicated. My mother responded with genuine happiness, while my father remained emotionally distant, though he did awkwardly offer congratulations. Ethan's response surprised me most of all. "I'm going to be the best uncle ever," he declared when I told him. "This kid is going to know they're amazing from day one." There was a sadness behind his words, an acknowledgement of what we had both missed in our own childhoods, and a determination to do better for the next generation. As I approach motherhood, I carry with me the lessons learned from a lifetime of conditional love. I know now that worthiness is not something to be earned through achievements or conformity. It is inherent, unchangeable, present from birth. My child will never have to wonder if they are enough. They will never have to compete for attention or validation. They will be loved completely for exactly who they are. The journey of healing continues. Some days are easier than others. There are still moments when my mother makes a thoughtless comment that stings, or when my father compares me unfavorably to Ethan out of habit. The difference now is that I no longer internalize these moments as reflections of my worth. I can name them for what they are, set appropriate boundaries, and move forward without carrying the weight of their expectations. If there's one thing I've learned through this entire experience, it's that we cannot change other people, only how we respond to them. My parents may never fully understand the pain they caused, or take full responsibility for their actions. That is their limitation, not mine. My responsibility is to break the cycle, to create a new pattern for my own family, one built on unconditional love, respect, and genuine support. To anyone watching this who recognizes their own story and mine, who has felt invisible or less than in their family, please know that your worth is not determined by others' ability to see it. You are enough, exactly as you are. Building boundaries is not selfish, it's necessary. Speaking your truth is not cruel, it's courageous. And sometimes, standing up for yourself is the greatest act of self-love. If my story has resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Drop a comment below, sharing one boundary you've created in your life that has helped you heal. How have you learned to value yourself when others wouldn't? Your experiences might just help someone else who is where you once were. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, the family we choose can be just as important as the family we are born into. Choose wisely, love deeply, and never forget your inherent worth.